So I'll call the meeting to order right at 7 o'clock. And the first item of business, of course, are the minutes of July 28th, 2020. So is there a motion? You're on mute, Jeff. You're on mute.
There we go. Sorry about that. I'll move to approve the minutes with corrections as noted.
Is there a second?
I'll
Gordon?
second.
Page 1. Page 2.
Sorry, I got a couple things under item number 5, the Catamount Community Forest Management Plan Addendum. First thing is Ethan Trapper is the Chittenden County Forester
Yes,
with the Vermont Department of Forest Parks and Recreation, not Fish and Game.
true, right?
And I think somewhere in the body of the discussion of the agenda item, it should mention that the addendum is called the Forest Management Plan. It's a little bit confusing because it's the Catamount Community Forest, and then the addendum is called the Forest Management Plan, i.e. forest is used twice. But I think it is important to call that out so we know what addendum this is. And then the last thing is the very last sentence. It reads, timber revenue will be used to cover expenses associated with the management plan. And I'm going to recommend we put the word help in before cover so that it reads timber revenue will be used to help cover. They don't know how much timber revenue is going to be generated and if it's going to be enough to cover the expenses associated with implementing the management plan.
Very true.
Great, thank you.
Anything else on page 2? Page 3.
Just one thing on page 3 under other business where it talks about discussion of face mask requirement. I wonder if there just should be a note that says because the governor mandated wearing masks, it makes a local, and I don't know if the right word is ordinance or local regulation unnecessary.
Sure.
It just clarifies it down the road.
Sure. Yeah, the first statement is the governor has mandated wearing masks, but that would not, wouldn't be amiss to add that into the minutes as well.
Good, thank you. That's it for me.
If there's nothing else on page 3, then all those in favor of approving the minutes of July 28th, 2020, raise your hand. 1, 2, 3. Done it. I'll keep these earpieces in. So we're at public comment, and I wonder if there's anyone in the waiting room for public comment. Eric?
No one, Terry, has indicated they'd like to make a comment at this time.
Okay. Then we'll move on to item number 4, and hopefully we have the 3 candidates that have indicated they'd like to be on the library board of trustees. If we do, we can proceed.
Yep, Terry, we have all 3 in the room. How would you like to proceed, to have one at a time or have all 3 in?
So I think it would be easier for us and maybe for them to have all 3 on the line at the same time, and we can ask them the same questions and they can answer the questions as we give them.
Sure. So I see John, Kathy, and Susan. In just a moment, I'm going to connect you to become a panelist so we can see and hear you. So just be a moment and you'll be rejoining us. So, just hold on a moment here.
All 3 show up on the board anyway.
There, I see John and Kathy and Susan in the bottom left-hand corner of your screen. You'll see an option to unmute and to start video.
Hello.
Oh,
There we go.
Hello.
Good evening.
so good evening and welcome to our select board meeting. And so the first thing I'd like to have you do is introduce yourselves, give us a brief introduction of your background and your interest in being on the library board, and then we'll go into questions from the board for you. So perhaps we can start with John Butterfield, next be Susan, and I'm not sure how to pronounce your last name, Susan De Leon,
Yep, like Ponce de Leon.
Okay.
and Kathy DeLuca. So perhaps John, if you'd start.
Okay, my name is John Butterfield. My wife and I own a home on North Williston Road where we've lived for 35 years. Since settling in Williston, we've been patrons and active users of the Dorothy Allen Memorial Library. A little of my background: I'm a licensed professional engineer who has worked for Hallam Associates, a South Burlington engineering firm, since 1987. As an owner and leader of the company, I served on the board of directors for 32 years. For 18 of those years, I was the chairman of the board. Transitioning into retirement, I stepped down from the Hallam board last year. Here in town, I'm currently a trustee of the Old Brick Church. I served on the Williston Energy Committee, helping draft the town energy plan. And back in the days when the library was able to have a 4th of July book sale, my wife and I were volunteers. I'm interested in becoming a library trustee to expand my involvement and support of the Dorothy Allen Memorial Library. I would accomplish this through my interest in the library and through my 32 years of prior board experience.
Thank you, John. Susan?
Wow, well, I'm just so much less qualified than John. I almost hate to start, but I'm a music publisher. I publish music. And I just returned to Vermont after being gone for 20 years. And I would like to get involved in the town I'm living in, specifically the library, because I spent like my whole childhood in libraries. I lived in a place that didn't have, well, those times there were no summer camps or anything like that, but the library had a summer program. And that's one of the most vivid memories of my childhood, is walking to the library every day in the summer. We're making little arts and crafts, and I went through the whole colored fairy tale book series at that point, and it just added a lot to my life. I still don't feel good unless I have 3 or 4 books in the house as a standby, just in case something happens. I know I'll be able to read. So that's my story.
Thank you. Kathy?
Hi, I'm
You're freezing up on us.
Kathy DeLuca, and
We're having
I've
trouble hearing you.
lived in Williston for 18 years. I have 3 daughters. Okay, can you hear me better now? How about if I bring it a little closer?
That's good.
Let's see, I've lived in Williston for 18 years. Okay, great. And I had 3 daughters that went through Williston Central School Systems. They're now in college and working. 2 of them are working on their own now. Woo! So I have a husband with deep roots in the insurance industry here in Vermont. The library has been a huge part of our lives. And for 11 years, we were heavy, heavy users of the library. And then I've been blessed to actually work at Dorothy Allen Library for the last 7 years. I got to achieve my library certification. And while I was a librarian there, I focused on the large print collection, adult programming and multi-age programming and outreach. I could go on more about those at a later time if you want more information, but I feel I understand the evolution of libraries because I've been a part of this change, and I feel I'm heavily qualified to help plan for 2025 and 2030. So that's why I'd like to be a library trustee.
Good, thank you. So start with questions from the board. Are there, since you all are at least somewhat familiar with the library, are there any significant changes that you think you'd like to see in the coming years? We'll start with, how about start with, well, we'll start back with John and then we'll do the rotation other than that. So John?
What I've seen is in this, in the last 5 or 6 months with social distancing, the library has kind of taken on a different role. And, you know, we've participated in several of the activities that are held remotely via Zoom. I think that that's going to be a part of the outreach of the library, even after we're beyond this pandemic that we're in. And I think that's going to be a significant part of the library and as we go forward.
Susan?
Okay.
I agree with John in the fact that things are going to be different going forward, no matter when or how the pandemic ends. I'd like to see more online people being able to download books online. That's what I've been doing with my Amazon Prime subscription, is downloading books to my Kindle. I don't know how much physical, how many physical books you can actually get into a library at one time. So I'd like to see a broadening of the online download capacity.
Good, thank you. Kathy?
Well, overall, I think the community happenings at the Dorothy Allen Library are explosive. I hope to help be part of this and build it to be broader in the future. I also think expanding outreach, like John had mentioned with I think a lot of these COVID things are going to become part of the future too. But I do think there's a lot of people in outreach that still we can service that larger. And then I think there's a few limitations in the infrastructure that I've seen over the times, such as transportation getting to the library or the library getting there. So those are some of the things I think might be changes in the future.
Good, thanks. Ted Kenny has joined us, so we have our full complement of select board members that we're going to have tonight. And so I'll turn it over to members of the board for questions that you may have. Jeff?
I'll raise my hand. I have questions for Kathy and Susan. Sorry, John. It's not that I don't have questions for you, but you've been before us before, and as an engineer, I understood exactly what it was myself. I understood exactly what it was you explained. Kathy, could you explain what a certificate of librarianship is? What does that mean?
Oh, that's great. That's a great question. Thank you, Jeff. I actually have it right here. My
No.
certificate of, I'm very proud of it, of librarianship. I worked over 5 years to achieve that. And what it happened, can you still hear me? I have it. So the librarian certificate is, you learn all about different departments of of your coworkers' positions too, on top of your own. You understand how a trustee's position is supposed to work, how it can work as part of a town, so overall you get to be a team player and be able to help others in some ways because you better understand their positions.
Okay, good. Thank you. And Susan, could you explain, your application says music publishing administrator. You mentioned that you published music. What does that mean?
It means you chase down the people who have signed, the writers, and get them to tell you what they're recording and releasing so that you know what to register. That's the biggest part of it, is chasing them. Then it's a lot of online, registering songs with the various performance societies around the world, making deals with sub-publishers in other parts of the world, and trying to place music in movies and TV commercials.
Okay.
Right now, that's really that's not happening at all because of the pandemic. There's no new filming going on, so it's kind of a slump.
Okay.
And then I
Well,
pay everybody.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Well, may the slump end quickly.
For everyone's sake.
Yes.
Other questions?
Yeah, I have a question actually for all three of you. I'm just curious. I know with the current pandemic that we're dealing with, we're evolving and we have to think of the future and change. But if you could each answer this question for me, what do you think is working really well in the library and that you want to hold on to? Sometimes I can be a traditionalist, so I'm just curious, before we let go of the past, what you think works well and what you'd like to keep moving forward.
So we should start with Kathy this time.
Sure. Gordon, can I ask a clarifying question on that? Are you asking what works well prior to the pandemic or while we're having?
Yeah. What historically, what's worked well before the pandemic hit and what you'd like to maintain?
That's another great question. Having worked at the Dorothy Allen Library for 7 years, it is a well-oiled machine. I was very proud to work there, and I think a lot is working well at the library. I think the way the strategic plan is set up, I had the opportunity to work on that both twice. I was one of the team players. That you set those goals and they really strive to achieve those goals every 5 years. You get it. You come up with another strategy. The other thing is, I think the staff and the friendliness and the welcomeness and how you just hang in there. And plus, I love the written word. I love a book. You know, I think, and I'm not alone. There's a lot of other people that are like us, Gordon, that are traditionalists that enjoy that part. We do have a lot of we also like people like Susan. She likes to read online, so they do offer that too. So, and we can continue to grow that. Hopefully that answered your question.
No, it did. Thank you.
John, John, you're next.
I think what has worked well is the outreach program, the electronic media, the audio, video resources that are available in addition to the printed. I think that the programs, I mean, just from being in the library, observing the variety of programs from kids to elder folks, which of course these days a lot have been in form of outreach, but you know, the musician, the sing along with the kids and all that stuff. So I think those are the things that are working. And I think those things that bring people into the library who are not necessarily avid book readers.
Susan, how about you?
Yeah, just in the short time I've been back here in Williston, because I lived in a different town before. I've gone to several meetings at the library before it was closed. With nothing that had nothing to do with the library. That just the library was opening its doors to provide meeting space for other groups. And the programs that you do have in place, or did have in place, let everyone come in, and there were children there at the same time. There were adults in the next room having their meeting. There were children in the other room having a meeting, not a meeting, but a play group, I guess. It appeals to a lot of people on a lot of different levels. A rich variety of programs and availability for people. And yes, a lot of people still like to hold that physical book. My sister's one of them. Can't get through her head to read the same book as me at the same time. But yeah, it's nice. It's a very nice, welcoming, warm feeling that the library generates.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Great.
Other questions from the board?
No.
So we thank you, the three of you, for coming tonight. And our policy is to discuss this at the end of our meeting, which will be somewhere in the neighborhood of about 8:30, according to what we have planned. You're welcome to stay online and listen to the rest of the meeting, or you're welcome to join us later on. I'll tell you that the time frame later might not be 8:30, but we will try to do that. So since we have no more questions, thank you so much for your interest, and we will look to see you about an appointment later on tonight. Thank you.
Thank you for your consideration.
Yes, thank you, and be safe.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So then we need to move on to the Route 2A Industrial Avenue intersection improvements. And Eric, is Mike LaCroix from AOT on yet?
Yep, Mike's here, and Tom Bigelow from the consulting firm, and Bruce as well. So
Good.
I'll get those folks connected in just a moment.
Okay.
Bruce was here, then his square disappeared. I think it'll just be another moment.
He's taking care of the dog.
Yeah, hopefully the
Most likely. Yeah.
sounds like the thunderstorms are moving a little bit out of Williston right now, hopefully.
I'm looking at some windows and seeing that it looks sunny out, so they aren't in Williston, are they?
No.
Hmm.
I'm down in Massachusetts, so.
Headed your way.
By me.
So it looks like Bruce is back on.
There he is.
Yes, okay. So whichever of you wants to start off with the answers to the questions that we asked you a few weeks ago.
Sure, Mike, would you like me to start?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, so thanks for everyone else having us back. We were in front of the board, I believe it was the last meeting, June 28th. This is obviously for the project on 2A, the reconstruction of both Route 2A and the Industrial Ave signal with Mountain View Road. And at that meeting, we presented basically two options that we've been talking to V-Trans about, which is how to maintain traffic on Mountain View Road. One is an option to detour traffic, westbound traffic from Mountain View Road onto Old Town Road and Route 2. The other option would basically maintain two-way traffic on Mountain View Road at all times. And as we noted at the last meeting, the detour wouldn't be in place full time. It would be during peak hours, off-peak hours, 9 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. And last about 3 to 4 weeks is what we anticipate. Now, there were two main questions that came from the board. One was regarding the increased cost for construction and right-of-way acquisitions if the detour were not implemented, and also what the estimated impact to traffic volumes on town roads would be if the detour was implemented. So the first one is regarding costs. We estimated that cost to be about $95,000. So if the detour was implemented, it'd be a $95,000 savings. 70,000 of that is related to construction costs, temporary roadway widening and additional traffic control items. And about $25,000 is related to the right-of-way acquisitions, which would be temporary rights that were needed on both Mountain View Road and Industrial Avenue, and also permanent utility rights, additional permanent utility rights that would be needed on Mountain View Road. The second question was related to the additional traffic that the detour may funnel onto town roadways. And basically, I believe the initial question was, what is the total traffic on Mountain View Road? And during the detour timeframe, based on some traffic counts we've taken both for the project and other data that VTrans has available for us to look at, there's about 2,450 vehicles that use Mountain View Road during that time frame of the detour. And the other town highway that we're looking at is Old Stage Road, utilizing that as the main detour route as far as town highways are concerned. And there are right now about 690 vehicles that use Old Stage Road. Just to give a little bit of perspective, that's about 2 vehicles per minute. During the detour, those volumes that I just listed are not during the detour. So during the detour, Old Stage Road would see an increase in volume of about 1,140 cars, which is about a 166% increase. And just to equate that to vehicles per minute, that would be about 5 vehicles per minute. And Mountain View Road would likewise see a decrease of about 1,300 vehicles during the detour time, which would be about a 53% reduction. Our analysis, I would say, is on the conservative side, mainly because we have basically assumed all vehicles that are being detoured are using the detour route. It would be safe to say that there are some motorists that are within some of the area subdivisions that would not utilize the detour route. They may use Mountain View Road and go to head towards Essex Junction. They would use Mountain View Road to head up Route 2A. We think it's fair to say that they may just head south and never make it onto Old Stage Road. They would just use Route 2, go through Taps Corner and head north. So right now we're assuming all of them use the detour route, and our numbers we do feel are rather conservative when it comes to that. So, and I believe the third item that came up was the Chittenden County Solid Waste District. We did reach out to them. They responded that they felt the detour would have minimal impacts on their operations. And they felt North Williston Road, which the town brought up, potentially using North Williston Road as a truck detour route. So that way trucks don't have to use Old Stage Road. The legal load limit supports their trucks, so they didn't see any issue with that. And they raised one potential concern about the posting of roadways in the springtime. However, we anticipate the detour to really be during the summertime. So we don't foresee that being an issue there. So those are kind of the main highlights. And Mike, I'm not sure if you want to add anything else.
No, I think that was well stated. I think at this point, we're just looking to get some sort of consensus from the board, and hopefully we've answered the questions and give you the information that you needed to make a good decision.
Questions, Jeff?
Well, my question is primarily for Bruce. Bruce, what are your thoughts? Well, I should first start with maybe the cost issue. And I assume $95,000 is viewed by V-Trans as being a significant cost and, impact.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially in this day and age, any money that we can save would go a long ways. So it's not that the project couldn't afford it, but $95,000 is getting up there.
Okay. Bruce, your thoughts about the detour impacts?
Well, when we first talked about this, I was for option 2, which is the doing the detours. When I saw the numbers of vehicles at first, I thought, well, that's a lot of vehicles to be putting on Old Stage Road. But then thinking about it a little bit more and going back to something Tom already said, some of these vehicles are going to, as soon as they find out, or it might take them a day or two, they're going to find a different route to take anyway. So it's not going to be all those vehicles. And it's a short-term impact to the people on Old Stage Road and North Williston Road, whereas the people around Mountain View, around the actual intersection, are going to have longer-term impacts if we don't allow this option to happen. So that's why I'm still in favor of doing option 2, even though it does put quite a bit of traffic on Old Stage Road for a few weeks.
Yeah. And don't worry, I will not hold up my decision about this on this question. But one thing we did not talk about, and I'm curious about, is whether putting that many vehicles on Old Stage Road and causing people to detour, which is going to put, I'm not saying it's right that this happens, but they're going to feel like they need to go to get to where they're going quicker. Do we expect there to be impacts on speeds on Old Stage Road due to the detour? And Tom, you might be able to best answer that, your experience.
Yeah, that hasn't been something I've seen in my experience where there's a significant increase in speed. I think most people tend to look at the volume and are concerned with the additional traffic. By and large, with detour routes, haven't heard that concern come up in the past.
They're going to be in a hurry to get nowhere fast, Jeff, because, Old Stage Road, we have to remember, is a stop sign controlled road when you get to Route 2.
Right.
So, that's going to make that more congested there anyway. So they're not going to be getting out there, if they're turning right, maybe a little bit faster, but anybody's trying to turn left, which you would assume they're going to go all the way down Mountain View Road to North Williston Road if they're trying to turn left anyway.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. All right. So the impact is going to be on the volume of traffic, not the speed of traffic. Okay. That's it for me.
Well, there was something in the write-up that mentioned detouring to North Williston Road rather than Old Stage Road.
For trucks.
For trucks.
Yeah.
Yes, and I think that's something we're looking for clarification on from the town. If the town does want all trucks to be detoured to North Williston Road, that's something that could be done. We just, I guess, look for the town's input on that matter itself.
Well, I can give you my thoughts on the select board, my thoughts on that too, about sending trucks to North Williston Road. Either way, they're going through a more residential area, whether it be Old Stage Road or North Williston Road. But once again, North Williston Road is controlled by 2 4-way stopped intersections. So, trucks are going to take a little bit longer anyway, and then trying to get out on Old Stage Road, if they get backed up on that hill because traffic's backed up a little bit, it's going to be even that much harder. So the thought was if we send them down to North Williston Road, at least get the break of the 4-way stops where people are taking their turns. The trucks get to get out a little bit easier than they will on Old Stage Road.
That was my big concern, Bruce, that at the corner of Old Stage and Williston Road, going left, they're particularly, well, I don't know if school is going to be in session or not, but if all things are, the way they used to be, going left at that intersection is can be pretty difficult, and people will get impatient. And I think if trucks were in the mix on that, it'd be a bad thing. If I were a truck, I'd want to go all the way down North Williston, go down Mountain View to North Williston, then from North Williston to the Four Corners by the Steeple Church, because at least that way people are taking turns. But I would also say that I expect that when this finally does happen, that if the board goes with this, that when people go down Old Stage, when traffic starts backing up there, they're going to take a right onto Lawnwood. And since I'm the second house in on Lawnwood, I'll be out with my stern look and pointing. If people go too fast, and I'm sure that'll work, and people will be grateful for my guidance.
Yeah. It's funny, Ted, I have a sort of, as you know, the not Old Stage, I'm sorry, North Williston Road, Mountain View Road, Governor Chittenden Road intersection is an intersection I'm very concerned about, but I can't argue against the logic of it makes sense to send trucks that direction.
Any further questions or comments? We do have a motion suggested that would take care of the suggestions, including the North Williston Road suggestion.
So I would move to accept option 2 as outlined in the memo dated August 12, 2020 from Green International Affiliates concerning improvements to the Route 2A Industrial Avenue Mountain View intersection, with the amendment that all truck traffic is to be detoured to North Williston Road.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Is there a discussion on the motion? Hearing none. All those in favor of the motion, raise your hand. 1, 2, 3. Pardon? 4. So we have unanimously agreed to do that. Thank you both folks from AOT and from Green International. We appreciate your coming and following up on the information that we requested.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
All right, take care.
So we'll move on then to Lamplight water line replacement bond article.
And
Eric,
Terry?
Yes.
Jeff here. Before we get started, I have what I believe is a conflict of interest. The engineering group I work with for the state of Vermont supports the SRF programs, including the drinking water SRF program. So it probably, I mean, the board may disagree or want my input, but it probably makes sense for me to abstain from voting on this.
And certainly that's your call on that. We would appreciate your expertise on the
Sure.
discussion anyway.
Oh,
So, Eric, are you going to lead off, and then Bruce is on this as well?
Yep, I'm getting a couple folks connected here. Terry from Aldrich and Elliott as well. Just be a moment.
Yeah.
And Shirley's gonna hop
Yeah.
in too.
Okay.
hey, Wayne.
And as we're getting connected, hi Wayne, I see, is Jason Booth joining us? I see a Jason, but it might be Jason from the Observer logged in.
No, I'm on, and then Joe Krupa from my office is on also, Eric.
Okay, I see Joe's just connecting in.
Hello, everybody.
Hi, Joe. So I looks like, let's wait for Bruce to get back here, and all right, I can kick things off while we're getting settled in here. So with my first meeting as town manager tonight, I'm bringing the board a bond article for consideration. And this is something I do with a lot of thought and consultation with staff here, that we have an opportunity to look at this. It's an opportunity to potentially save a substantial amount of money for this project over time. So what we'll do tonight is we have folks from Aldrich and Elliott who will provide an overview of the project. We'll take a look at the financing mechanism that's brought this to the forefront at this time. And then I can provide some pathway options for the logistics of holding a vote if the board is interested. There is a pathway that is a short-term pathway. We'd have to make some decisions on this week, but we can get to that point as we go here. Another piece to this that we'll discuss tonight is an application for a loan from the state revolving fund to cover final engineering designs for this project, which the board could approve that application tonight if it was ready. So I think what I'll do now is probably turn it over to Wayne and Joe from Aldrich and Elliott, and Bruce, feel free to jump in on this part as well. If they could walk us through what the project looks like, and we can also get into the funding opportunity that we're looking at, and myself and Shirley will jump in here as well.
Yeah, Bruce, did you want to jump in and just talk a little bit about the needs, some of the background and kind of
Sure.
the issues you've had with this location?
Yep. So Lamplight, as you all know, is one of our older developments. When it was originally developed, it was developed with its own water system. In other words, it had private wells that were used to serve the homes in that area. At some point, the town of Williston took over the system, and some water line work was done. The old wells were obviously disconnected, so there's no cross connections. We've had issues with water lines freezing, service lines freezing in that development. We have 7 or 8 that we actually send notices to every year as soon as it really starts to get cold in January or whatever, reminding them to let their water run so that their service lines don't freeze going into their house. While we were doing our stormwater project there a year ago, we found that there were a lot of issues, water line not being very deep, meaning the main line even. We found some old black iron pipe that was still in the ground serving some homes. 3 homes were off a 2-inch black iron pipe that ran under the road, and then 3 service lines were taken off that for homes. We haven't used black iron pipe in ages in the industry. So we don't know how much more of that might be out there. We found just enough discrepancies with everything going on over there that we decided that we would try to look into replacing the water line throughout that whole development. And that's where Wayne and his company got involved with helping us to start to look at that. Yeah. And then the Drinking Water State Revolving Loan Funds come out with some pretty attractive stuff right now, and that's what we're here to talk about. This was in the capital improvement program, but the money that was put in for that wasn't put in until 2022, so it was just a placeholder at this point. So we're trying to accelerate that, obviously. So, hey, Wayne?
Yep. So, Bruce, because of those issues, the town asked us to start looking at development, look at options. So initiated what we call a preliminary engineering study back here late last year. And we wrapped up that a 90% draft that was submitted to the state in about April timeframe, kind of through the COVID thing. And what's in that document basically is, we document the project need, any kind of environmental issues or concerns. We'll also look at alternatives. But ultimately, at the end of that, we have what we call a proposed project. So this includes about 6,800 feet of new 8-inch water line, within the Lamplight Lane acres development. We put a, schedule together. We put total project costs together. We identify permits are needed. So that was submitted to the state. And then back in about January, late January of this year, the town submitted a priority list application to the state to get on the list. Things were delayed a little bit with the COVID, but the final intended use plan was issued. Let's see, it was about 3 weeks or so, and that's dated July 1st for the next fiscal year. And this project did show up. It is on the project priority list, so it's in the fundable range. And part of the reason that the town kind of decided to move forward with this is some really great funding opportunities for these projects for this fiscal year. And for this particular type of project, basically the town up to the first million would receive 75% loan forgiveness. And then for anything over $1 million, you would receive another 25% loan forgiveness. So for example, if this was, approximately $2 million, the town would receive about $1 million in loan forgiveness. And there's a couple things with this loan subsidy forgiveness. It's first come, first served. So that was kind of where the discussion was initiated. Great opportunity for the town, but Eric and Bruce started getting into some of the timeline and dates, and the concern if a bond vote waited till March, again, with being first come, first served, the funds could get allocated or moved to other projects. So that was really kind of the initiative to kind of move this along a little bit quicker and kind of get the select board's pulse here on what your thoughts are and what your position was on that.
I would just add, thanks, Wayne, that there's about $13 million in additional subsidy for allocation this fiscal year. And one of the prerequisites here is the bond vote approval, which makes it so we can submit for possible subsidy award at that stage. And it would be considered of how many folks have applied and how much subsidy has been awarded at the point in time when we meet all the requirements, the affirmative bond vote being one of those.
Are you thinking a November bond vote? Part of the November election?
So that's where I can jump into this piece of it now. I see 4 possible pathways for the board to consider here. There's a lot of moving pieces as we all have seen with COVID, and especially the November 3rd election and what that's going to look like. So the state of Vermont's going to be mailing the main ballot for the November 3rd election to every registered voter. And on that main ballot, they can include local articles. For example, we'll have our justices of the peace on the main ballot being submitted. The state's deadline to get a local article on that ballot is next Monday, August 24th. So it's a short period of time for this option. So if the board were ready to move forward on something like this, granted it's very quickly. I've spoken with the town attorney. The town attorney could prepare the necessary documents, and we could hold a special meeting later this week to authorize the bond vote. Granted, you're discussing this for the first time tonight, and I know that's a very short timeline. The other option, the town can print its own ballots, decide to hold a special election on the 3rd. It's the town's discretion whether to mail those out to all registered voters in town or have folks come to the polls to vote on that. Granted, a lot of different logistical challenges there as well. To do this, the board needed to decide by mid-September or so. And then another special election could be held in November or December, or this could be held until next March on town meeting day. We bring it forward tonight to look at these different options, and granted, there's different timelines and varying degrees of time to make a decision on this.
So questions for the board. We had, I think, 2 things to decide tonight. One is whether we go forward with the revolving fund and the amount of the loan. We have a motion to that effect. And secondly, whether or not we want to try to get it on the November ballot, which would require like a 5-minute meeting later on this week. In my mind, I think we need to go forward with the loan request. And also, I think we need to do the November ballot. There'll be some education required between now and the time the ballots go out to the town membership. But to spend money for an additional ballot, which is just going to confuse people, I think would be not the thing to do. Any kind of a special election, we don't get a lot of people that are voting for it. And I think with a November ballot, we would certainly get a a substantial number of people interested in it. Other points of view?
How much is the cost of the entire project?
The estimate is 2 million, Ted.
Okay.
Yep.
And
Yeah, and one thing to Ted, one thing that I think Eric has emphasized too is that, you know, whatever the select board chooses to do for a bond vote, obviously, if you go through that process and it passes, and something happens differently with the subsidy, you know, some of that's used up. Obviously, the select board has the opportunity to revisit that down the road, if that doesn't come to be.
yeah, the vote, and Eric, you can confirm this, that the vote is just to give the town the authority to get the loan.
Yeah, that's correct. To have the authorization to borrow the money, and then we'll see where we land in the pool. We don't have to exercise the bond right in November when the next financing round is. We can wait on that authority, but granted, when we wait, the subsidy may not be as great, and we also making this priority list, we could get leapfrogged in the priority list at some point along the way.
And those also allow the town the opportunity to submit the construction loan application and some of these other things that are needed to, you know, fully qualify you for the loan subsidy.
Can I ask a question, Wayne?
Yep.
So the 87.5, first of all, thank you for helping Eric and I sort of understand the engineering loan will flow into the final loan, assuming we get one.
That's correct.
So let's just say something happens and we decide not to move forward. Even if we pursue and, you know, pay the engineering costs, those engineering costs are not going to just be wasted money, because say we wait 2 years and this project comes back. I mean, that engineering isn't going to change. So we need that investment no matter what to proceed with this project.
Yeah, that's correct, Shirley. And that the loan for the, which we call the step 2, that doesn't just include engineering. We've also got some allowances in there for $4,000 for legal, $1,500 for permit fees, $2,500 for administration. So worst case scenario, if the bond vote didn't pass, this project never goes forward, whatever the town uses in this planning loan, you'd pay for it over 5 years at 0% interest. And you're correct, this gets rolled ultimately in the construction loan. And the reason for doing this, if the town qualifies for that subsidy, you know, that's applied to not just the construction, but all these other related project costs.
Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions or comments for the board?
No, I think, as you know, Terry, my group, you know, supports the SRF programs, and I don't think there's going to be a better deal. We'd be a fool not to take advantage of this deal, and there won't be a better deal down the road, most likely. So we should do everything we can to get on board.
Thank you. If there's no further questions, there is a motion suggested that would take care of the loan.
I'd move to approve a step 2 loan application to the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund for final design of the Lamplight Acres Waterline Replacement Project in the amount of $87,500.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconds. Is there discussion on the motion?
I will abstain from this vote.
Shirley, this is Wayne, correct? I had 85,700 for the amount.
Ooh.
On the application, just to correct the motion.
85.7?
Yep.
I would amend my motion.
I transposed the number, my fault.
Okay.
Thank you.
The motion has been corrected. Does the seconder agree?
I agree.
If there's no further discussion on it, and all those in favor of the motion, raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, and 1 abstention. So we have done that. We need to give the staff direction now on how we wish to proceed with a a vote on this. Is there any objection to going forward with a November 3rd ballot issue? I see no objection, so we'll be calling a special meeting of the board for later on this week. It should be relatively short to consider the ballot issue. So thank you, Wayne and Joe and Bruce.
Look forward to the day where I can come back to a real select board.
Yeah, so do we.
Zoom in. Can't wait.
Yeah.
I am doing this remotely, which works out pretty quick. I'm on vacation in Maine this week, so that actually it's got some benefits, but that's great.
Thanks for joining us, Wayne. We all appreciate it.
Thank you.
Rubbing that in, Wayne? Is that what you're
No,
doing?
I'm not, Bruce. It's different, you know, we're all learning.
Moving on then
Good night,
to.
guys. Thank you.
Yep.
Good night.
Take
Thank
care.
you. Thanks.
Take care, everyone.
Moving on to the Community Justice Center staffing. And I think Shirley is going to talk about this.
And Terry, Krista Lee is expected to join us. I think she's
good.
just not on quite yet. I expect her pretty soon, though, if you
We're running a
want
little
to go
bit
somewhere else.
We're running a little ahead of time. Sure, let's go on into personnel policy amendment. And Eric, I think you're handling that.
Yep. I'll find the paper that's on that I put in order here. Where is it? Here we are. So we have some personnel policy amendments. We'll bring to the board a more comprehensive package at some point. We make notes of these over time. It's been about 3 years since we've taken a look for multiple personnel policy amendments, but we've had one that's come up a few times with new hires, and I felt it was appropriate for the board to take a look at it now. So it's under our insurance and related benefits provision, and currently right now we have an employee has to wait. They have to complete 30 days of employment, and then on the first of the month following that initial 30 days, they're eligible for town insurance, health, dental, life, disability. So for example, if someone started today and they were hired, they wouldn't be eligible to be on the town health insurance till October 1st. And it's a bit of a gap for folks, and we have a new employee starting it's been some challenges that have come up with that. And other organizations that I've seen in other towns, it's the first of the month following when you're hired. So I offered this policy amendment to the board to amend our personnel policy for the first of the month following the date of hire for a new employee to be eligible for benefits if they are so classified as being a full-time employee that can have those benefits.
It's a better recruiting tool too, not to have to go uninsured for a month.
Sure. Eric, do you know, or Eric or Shirley, do you know why we had this in place? Why this is currently the way the policy is?
I mentioned it to Rick before he left, and he didn't really have any history to offer on that. But I think he was basically in agreement as well that we should, when we do the policy revisions, we should change that. So, I mean, it just makes sense to do this one little amendment.
Okay.
Other questions for Eric or Shirley?
And just out of curiosity, do you know what other towns do?
I know from experience in Milton where I worked, it was the first of the month following, first day of the month following the month you started. I believe other towns follow this similar. I have to look specifically at their policies, but I know organizationally this is a common practice out there.
Okay.
Agreed. Yeah.
I'd be looking for a motion.
I'd move to amend the town personnel policy as presented.
Do a second.
I'll second. Jeff?
Is there any discussion on the motion? Hearing none. All those in favor of the motion, raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4-0. So we're still running a little bit ahead of time. Let's go on to the Vermont Municipal Retirement Group. for the town manager, and Eric, you're talking about this one too.
Yep, and I bring this up tonight. There's a timing, end of September, if any groups are changed each year. So coming in as a new manager too, I was taking a look at different structures we have here, and currently the town manager position is in our retirement groups, part of Beamer's Group B, and Beamer's Group C, and this is in the defined benefit track. Our public safety administrators are eligible for Group C, along with our unionized employees and police and fire. And looking at it from an organizational standpoint, I offered to the board to consider having the manager's position also eligible for Beamer's Group C, seeing that the manager oversees these other folks in the organization, to consider a retirement group that's level to these other employees. The way that Beamer's works is if you essentially create a new employment group, just encompassing the town manager. This would have to be approved by the end of September, and then this would make the position eligible the following July. And the thinking behind that is it allows the town there's a tiny bit more budgetary cost to it to be built in, and then this would be in effect the following July of 2021 to move forward with a change like this. And I've included in your package the comparison of the Beamer's groups and what the structures are for both of those criteria.
Questions for Eric?
Okay, I'm sorry, so I'm sorry, Eric, I did not pick up on this. So I did note in your memo where it talked about there's a greater benefit to Beamer Group C, but there's also a greater cost to the town.
Yep.
I just want to make sure, and I'm just picking up on that now. In fact, it's basically, it looks like it's a doubling of going from Group B to Group C.
Jeff, I think that first column is the employee contribution. The employer, the second contribution is
yes,
about a 1.25%.
My bad. You're correct. You're correct. Okay. And
good question if it was doubling.
Sorry. These meetings happen too late at night, by the way. Shirley, your thoughts?
I agree with what Eric wrote up. I think it is, I'll just say, odd, for lack of another word, to have people who report to you getting a better benefit than you. Because one of the other benefits of Group C is that you also have a shorter service period or a shorter retirement period. But it's a little less of your AFC, your average final compensation calculation. So there are pros and cons both ways of it, but I think, offering the town manager a pension plan that puts a little bit more into it is not unreasonable.
Okay, and would we be unique in doing this, or is this common amongst towns Williston size?
I'm gonna have to defer to Eric on this because he did all the research here.
Okay.
I can speak to Milton, the other town I worked in, had Beamer's C for non-represented employees, but I can certainly do some more research on that if the board wants to discuss this further at the next meeting. There's no deadline to make a decision tonight.
Okay, if that's the case, Eric, if you don't mind,
Sure.
And I'm not trying to be difficult, but I would appreciate, knowing the answer to that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Eric, I'll reach out to the controller, the equivalent of my position at Colchester, South Burlington. I have in Milton, actually, not Milton, St. Albans as well, Essex. I mean, I have contacts with all of those people. I can get that information.
Okay, sounds good.
And that'll seem a little bit more neutral, maybe.
Yeah,
Would-
I recognize I'm in the kind of awkward position of presenting
Yes.
this and trying to
Right.
trying to remove personal
yeah.
piece
Oh,
of
yeah,
it, but
every town does it. We're
know.
the odd one, right?
but I'm trying to think of the position of the manager within the organization to look at this. So I
Yeah.
agree, Jeff. Good research with our peers is important to this. So certainly
And
we'll
would somebody at VMers, maybe be able to provide some, relative information along, this lines? It seems, okay.
I'll reach out to Jen Gray, sure.
Okay, great, thank you.
Whatever you might check with Vermont League of Cities and Towns as well,
Yeah.
surely.
Yep. I'll reach out to Jill as well.
Unless there's a objection, we'll put this on the agenda for another meeting, and we'll get some more information.
Okay, good, great, thank you.
So we're still moving ahead, and perhaps we can take up the library trustee appointment issue. We did interview the 3 candidates, and I'd be looking for input on the 3 potential appointees.
Hang on a sec. Okay.
Well, this is an appointment for between now and March, when there will be an election
Right.
for the unexpired term. And we do have the 3 candidates. In my mind, we have one candidate who has a terrific background as far as the library goes, because she worked there. And I think she'd be ready to go from day one. But that's just my own opinion.
Eric, just, it would be helpful for me to know, are any of the candidates listening?
Let's see. Kathy and John are logged in right now.
Okay, great, good. I mean, not that that's bad at all. I just, just want to know. Well, the first thing I just want to say, and I guess for their ears, is, as you know, I enjoy being on the select board, although there are a couple roles that we do that I do not like. And this is one of them, because we have 3 candidates who I would have no issues with appointing tonight, all 3 of them, except we can't. It's our job to choose one. And so I don't like saying no when somebody steps forward, and I particularly like the library board, where we're looking for diversity, I think is a good thing to have on that board. 2 people we're going to have to basically, for lack of better words, reject. And I don't like doing that. Certainly not my favorite part of being on the select board. With that said, I do think where Terry was going, Kathy does, in my humble opinion, appear to be the most able to step right in and, for lack of better words, do what needs to be done.
I agree. I think it really just comes down to that. It's just the past experience is the distinguishing characteristic.
Yeah.
So would the chair entertain a motion?
Would.
I would.
I have a typo in the motion. I just noticed, Ted. It should be 2021.
Oh.
I would move to appoint Kathy DeLuca to the Library Board of Trustees until March 2021, when a local election will be held to fill the unexpired 5-year term.
March 2, not March 20.
March 2. I thought, if I did not say that, I meant it. March 2.
Yeah.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
I think one thing that different from this is it's an election, and all 3 of these people could run for the position come next March. So hearing no other discussion, all those in favor of the motion, raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 4-0. So congratulations, Kathy, and look forward to having you on the library board. So is Crystal Lee on?
Let's see.
I sent her a text right after when they came up saying, we're ready now. She didn't respond.
I don't see her just yet. She had emailed me on Friday that she was planning to log in about 8:10, and I've got 8:08 right now.
Yeah, me too.
I can probably start and just let me know when she's here. Why don't I start by just giving a little history of what's happened with the CJC?
Let's do it. Yeah, let's do that.
So the staffing was, up until COVID, Krista Lee was 38 hours a week as the director. The restorative justice specialist was 23 hours a week, and the administrative assistant was 20 hours a week. Once COVID, and in the FY21 budget, there was already town budget in the police department to move Krista Lee up to full-time because of their continuing increase in the caseload and, you know, the additional deferrals or referrals they've been getting through the court system, mandated by the DOC that they accept. So then COVID came along and the administrative assistant position was laid off because a lot of her work was answering the phone, setting up all the appointments, connecting with the board members, and that just didn't work in the remote environment. So the administrative assistant was laid off, and shortly after, we increased the restorative justice specialist from 23 hours a week to 29 hours a week to help with the additional actual caseload from Krista Lee. You know, she has been working overtime way before I came to the town, but it's sort of constant overtime. So we're looking to provide more help from her. So with the FY21 budget, there is $23,000 budgeted in the police department. Part of that includes the 5,800, which was the increase in Krista Lee's hours to full-time. And the rest of it was to account for expenses of the program above what the DOC was going to fund. Hence, the DOC directive is that they will continue to work remotely at least through the end of the year at this point. And in early July, we eliminated the administrative assistant position because there really was just no future work that she was going to be able to do. So with that, Krista Lee and I have gone through a few versions of the budget, but really looking to make the restorative justice specialist a full-time employee. After we put the FY21 budget together, we also got an additional $15,000 from the DOC, which was unexpected when we did the budget because they are recognizing the additional caseload. And I'm going to let Krista Lee talk all about that because that's her baby. But to support the additional caseload that the Williston Community Justice Center is taking on, and with higher volumes than any other of the community justice centers in Chittenden County. And I am going to let Krista Lee roll from here.
Welcome, Crystal Lee. You're on.
All right. Thank you so much. I'm sorry I was a little bit late. My Zoom connection is not so great on South Road. So as Shirley was saying, our case numbers have just continued to grow and have been since the last time that we met. And according to DOC in our conversations with Jim Baker, it doesn't look like those case numbers are going to drop for us at all. In fact, if anything, they are going to continue to increase. And in order to do that work, I think we have to have 2 full-time staff members. Otherwise, I continue to put in 60 hours and it's not sustainable. And with COVID, what's happened, and I'm sure, you know, we've talked about this before, and I'm sure you've probably heard it from the police chief as well, but our numbers from Williston PD have stayed pretty much the same. Our referrals have not gone down. State's attorney referrals have not been being prosecuted. And so most of the cases are being sent back to the referring officer for CJC referral. And so that has also increased our workload quite a bit, as well as with juvenile justice, with the youthful offender legislation that's passed. So looking at those numbers, it's pretty easy to see that doing the work on one full-time and one part-time person is pretty next to impossible. And so I just hope that we can, really look at that, look at the need, look at the quality of service, and also recognize that DOC, as Shirley said, DOC did recognize the amount of work and the amount of cases that we have, and did provide us with additional funding where most other centers actually lost money from their grants for this cycle. And so I think that says a lot about DOC valuing the work that we're doing, putting more money into Williston. And yeah, so our cases, like just today alone, I got 6 new referrals, and some centers in Chittenden County are saying that they're not getting any referrals. So I cannot continue realistically to do the cases alone without greater support. I just don't think we can continue to provide the service of excellence and also deliver on the grant deliverables that are required through the government as well.
I just wanted to jump in, and as we look at the budget model here that Shirley's put together, this infusion of additional grant dollars plus what we've allocated in FY21 through the police department budget would cover this increase. And I wonder if Shirley and Crystalie, if you could also speak to, in your conversations with the state, the longevity of this additional funding, because I think that's important, that this isn't going to be just a 1-year increase, that if the board were to make this position a full-time position, to talk about its funding model moving forward. And granted, if we saw a reduction in funds over time, we may need to reevaluate it if it was full-time at that point.
Certainly. So I can share my last conversation I had with DOC, and that involved Derek Miadevnik as well as Matt D'Agostino, who's the finance head for DOC. It's unlikely that we will lose funding, given our numbers and given with the justice reinvestment initiatives that are coming down the pipeline. Vermont is reinvesting money both in juvenile justice and in restorative justice, relooking at the model in Chittenden County and looking at numbers. Williston sits high. And as Shirley said before, we have the largest volume of cases actually out of the state. So according to DOC, they do not foresee any need in cutting funding, even with COVID, coming down the pipeline. And I think Governor Scott has, also said that, he's not looking to cut services. And part of those services are making sure that people who are victimized by crime are taken care of and that responsible parties are being held accountable. And so looking at the model, I do think from my conversations with DOC that it is sustainable. They've often said in the past, we can give money, but anticipate a cut, anticipate, a change in funding. And that was not the message that we received in our last meeting.
Okay.
So when we sent the FY21 budget to Derek at the DOC, on the line that says FY21 approved town funding, I actually only put the 5,800 in there, which was the amount of Crystalie's additional wages to get her to full time. But then in the verbiage that went with it, I told them that we had more in the budget, but our goal was hopefully not to increase that funding anymore. Because if you look at the match, there's a significant amount in the match that probably doesn't really capture everything as well. So, our goal is to have DOC continue to have funding increase as our caseload increases. He didn't respond at all, but I mean, we made it clear about what we were looking for.
Questions from the board?
So I'll just add one more piece as we're looking at the budget. So this budget, I'm just going down to the line that said net revenues greater than expenses. So this budget does support moving this person to full-time with additional I'll say the town budget left over, because we will charge everything to the grant and only go to the town budget if we absolutely have to, if something changes along the way.
And I think that's, I have no, this is not at all meant to mean that I'm not for what's being proposed, the 2 full-time positions. But my concern is that when we rely on a grant to fund a position or increase the hours in a position, we have to do that knowing that that grant may disappear.
Right.
And I don't, it may disappear, but yet the need to fund the position both positions full-time is still there. So we just have to have that in the back of our minds as we're moving forward. That's the commitment I believe we have to make when we're deciding to do this.
Other comments or questions? We certainly have a wonderful program here
Oh, yeah.
in Williston. We have all sorts of people who have volunteered their time and continue to do so. And so we thank the staff. We thank the volunteers for doing that. If there's no other questions or comments, I'd be looking for a motion.
I'd move to reclassify the restorative justice specialist position as full-time.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Is there discussion on the motion? Hearing none. All those in favor of the motion, raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4. We've done it again. So thank you very much, Crystal Lee, for coming before us tonight, and we're glad to do this. So thanks again.
Thank you all so much for your support, and Shirley, thank you, and Eric for your continued support and the extra effort to help us get this in the right direction. So thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Crystal Lee.
Thanks.
So I think the last thing on the agenda, well, 2 things on the agenda, the manager's report. We have a brand new town
Yeah,
report.
Well, thank you, Terry, and then good evening again. It's been a busy first 2 weeks, but it's been a very good and productive first 2 weeks. I've
Good.
Being here, we've had a number of projects to keep moving, and a lot of good work's being done by our staff and supporting me to step into the role. So it's very much appreciated, and we'll continue to keep working hard here, moving ahead. We'll have a busy fall, and Shirley and I had a preliminary meeting today to start planning the FY22 budget this afternoon. So we'll be starting discussions with that, and we'll have something for the board to start looking at in the next couple of months as we jump into budget season here. So seeing we haven't met for a few weeks here, I've got a number of items I'm going to just briefly touch on in my written report this evening. The quarterly report, I hope to have that in September. I'm getting a little more assistance from Rick in wrapping that up, as we didn't quite have enough time to train me how to access some of the files. So I'll have that to the board in September. And if you're certainly interested in any data beforehand, please let me know, and I can get some of that from the report so far to you. You have in your packet, and I've had Shirley to stay on here, the local option tax receipts report for the last quarter of FY20. And when I received this last week, I was frankly pleasantly surprised to see where we ended up last fiscal year. You'll see in the report I included this time, the last 2 columns to the right are budget numbers for FY20 and FY21. And what the town has done in the past is use a 3-year average to budget what the receipts are going to look like from both the local options tax and the rooms, meals, and alcohol sales, rooms and meals tax rather, side of it. So we ended up in FY20 using our 3-year average to what we budgeted, with a variance of just under $200,000 from what we anticipated from this revenue source. Granted, you'll see, as expected, the rooms and meals tax revenue was much lower as in previous years. But we also weren't sure where the local options tax on retail sales was going to end up, and for that quarter is just under $700,000, and we had budgeted using our average a little bit lower than that. So we ended on a good note to close out the year. Granted, this is one of the pieces in the revenue puzzle here that is the most volatile revenue source that we have in the town. So we're going to take a closer look at this as we plot out our revenue projections revised for FY21 the next month or so. But overall, it's going to add that to our fund balance for FY20, and we'll certainly have more insight from our auditors as they begin their field work coming up on where our fund balance number is going to end. And Shirley, do you have anything to add on that right now?
Well, I was going to say, Eric, you've mentioned this before that, from the state, we can't get the breakdown on the sales and use tax. We can't get the breakdown between what's actually happening in Williston and what's online. But I think the number 695,000 gives us an awful good feeling that all those online sales that are now collecting sales tax, Williston is getting its 1% for anything shipped to Williston. So that was a good feeling to see that number, because other words, there's no way that number would have been that large. So that gave us some comfort.
So we'll be taking a look at this, and we'll also, our first tax payment is due September 15th. So after that, we'll have a good sense with a beginning for our revenue flow for FY21, and we'll continue to update the board on this. And if anyone from the board has questions about any revenue source, feel free to reach out, and we'll get information to the full board to answer those. I also want to highlight here some good news from this summer, and I want to recognize our fire and police personnel here. Everyone in these departments during this time of COVID, everyone's really stepped up. It's something really we haven't foreseen in our lifetime to have a pandemic situation that we're in, and our police officers and firefighters, it's in the back of their minds every call they go on, potential exposure and what's out there. So I want to recognize our staff for that work. And I also want to call attention to a number of our officers this evening who have assisted in saving 2 lives this summer. We had 2 code saves with folks having heart attacks in town that our first responders were on the scene to help them. So I want to recognize these officers. 1 code save was recently on the first tee at Catamount Golf Club, and another at a residence earlier this summer. But Officer Matthew Cohen, Officer Sarah Bell, Officer Travis Trabluski twice, Sergeant Bryant Claffey twice on the police side, and our firefighters, Chris Farner, Corey Hill twice, our fire lieutenants Keith Baker, Ryan Prouty, and George Shortsleeves. They all were involved in these calls, and it take a number of personnel to have that positive outcome that we're able to have for these 2 folks. So I just want to recognize them publicly for a job well done, and in our departments for their continued great work during this pandemic. And with that, we also had some great recognition for Williston Fire recently. It is one of 3 Vermont agencies recognized as a Pediatric Safe Service Award, recognizing commitment of agencies that are improving pediatric emergency care and go beyond the basic requirements to provide excellent care to children in the community. And Williston's Fire has also received the American Heart Association Mission Lifeline Gold Plus Award for quality improvement measures for the treatment of patients who experience severe heart attacks, which really our 2 responses this summer is a testament to that award that we received. I mentioned the budget process. We'll have more information on that coming up. I'm pleased to report our fire chief hiring process. I've made a conditional offer of employment that's been accepted by a candidate to become our next chief. I'm wrapping up some pre-employment work with the candidate this week, and I hope to have a public announcement out soon of our next fire chief, who is likely to start midway through September, I believe, as it stands now. And there's a lot going on. That's everything on my written report that I have to share this evening. Happy to answer any questions the board may have on those items.
Any questions for Eric? Moving that along.
Good job with your first report.
Thank you. I've made it through.
Terry told us to take it easy on you, by the way.
Appreciate it.
Moving on to other business, I gotta find a way to be able to get these earpieces in, and so they'll stay in. So under other business, we do have 1 thank you note, and it says, Dear Terry, Joy, Jeff, Ted, and Gordon, thank you all for your thoughtful gift, plaque, and kind words. It's been a tremendous honor and pleasure working with you. As a private citizen now, I can rest easy knowing the town is in good hands. I will wear the jacket with pride as I apply the waters of Lake Champlain. Thank you and best wishes to all. Rick, our former town manager.
Yeah.
Is there any other business to take up tonight?
Terry, if I could mention what we have 4 board members here to hold a special meeting on potentially Thursday or Friday evening if just checking on availability of folks, or we can also follow up via email if that's better tomorrow.
And Eric, I'm sorry, Eric, do you know what you need to put together to get the information? I'm assuming to Sarah, who will get it to the SOS?
Yeah, the town attorney will assist in preparing that in the next day or so.
Okay.
Thursday evening is going to be very difficult for me.
We need about a meeting somewhere around 6 o'clock probably. Does that work for people
It'd be better.
on Friday?
6 o'clock on Friday. Let me check my social calendar. Oh, wait, nothing. Interesting.
We'll take our life.
Yeah. I could do that. 6 o'clock on Friday.
Look good?
Yep.
Okay.
Any other business for tonight? Seeing nobody wishing to do that, then I will call this meeting adjourned.
All right. Good night, everyone.
Thank you.
Yeah, everyone.